Hello. Thank you for
Hello.
joining me on the same drugs. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah, when I was contacted, I think by your agent or publicist at
hmm
first, I didn't think I knew who you were, and then I looked at your cartoons, memes, and I was like, oh no, I definitely know who this is.
You're like, I know those sloppy lines. Yeah.
No, no, no. I love them. I think they're great. And I think I've been, how long have you been doing this for?
Probably about 5 years, but my targets have changed over time. It started really like doing like really surface level cultural stuff, like Game of Thrones stuff, cutesy stuff. But then I started to get a little more political. I started criticizing like Obama. I had voted for Obama at that time, and I realized that wow, you can draw something very simple, not totally well crafted artistically necessarily, but deliver something very poignant or sharp or cutting in a very simple way. And I realized I had a weapon, but I didn't know how to use it yet. I was just like kind of flailing a knife around. And so, yeah, the last 5 years, I've been like learning to utilize what the medium actually is.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you about your political leanings
hmm
and political trajectory. It sounds like you started off at some point as a Democrat.
Yeah, I moved to Los Angeles when I was like 21 or 22 with my friend. And I think most people in their youth, if they're in Los Angeles or wherever they are, they're kind of default culturally political. And so this tie between culture and politics seemed to be inextricable. And so I was default just because I was like, floating around. Yeah, all the mantras and all of the slogans and stuff. But then, I had voted for Obama, and I think it was because I started cartooning that I realized, oh, I have to criticize my own side, my own jersey, right? And I feel like that's the most responsible thing to do for anyone it's easy to point to the enemy or the opponent and do all the rhetoric and stuff, but it's hard. It sometimes takes more to criticize whoever you think is your not authority, but like your leaders, right? And so I did that. I remember the moment I did that with Obama, because he was notorious for dropping the mic. He was the cool statesman who smiled and said everything perfectly. All I did is I swapped the microphone with a bomb because I was like, oh, he dropped like how many bombs, right? And I was like, that's not why I voted for him. I didn't vote for bombs. And the moment I posted it, I didn't have a big following at all. It was my direct sort of community in LA that had a visceral reaction. It was like, you're going to make Trump look good. You can't do this. And I started to see that there was something unique about the guarding the truth, right? And on either side, this exists where you sort of, if it's true and you expose it, just don't do it because it's not pragmatic for our side. And I just realized, like, at some point, I couldn't be a cartoonist or a satire person if I wasn't willing to shine the light on anything, right? And so that's kind of like where you go, and it's hard for people to place you politically because I abandoned ship from the liberal Democrat thing. I kind of floated in what I like to call the safe raft of sort of libertarianism, where you can't be blamed for anything, and you point to the sinking ships on each side, and you're like, you can't,
Like, not me.
yeah,
I
yeah,
say
not
anything
me,
goes.
yeah, exactly. And then I sort of started getting a little more into philosophy, and then going back toward because there's always this. I don't know if you remember when I was like a little bit more classical liberal in a sense, and I listened to like Ben Shapiro and all that stuff. He would always say like culture's downstream from politics, or politics is downstream from culture. And I started maybe looking at that closer because that's easy to accept. It's kind of like, okay, that makes sense. But then I started asking, well, what's before culture? Because culture, it doesn't just arise right from no philosophy or thinking or moral statements or value judgments. It's not like it's just a randomness of ingredients. There's something behind that actually informs culture. And I started looking a little bit deeper into just general worldviews, theology, and I started to see that, wow, this is always sort of under there, whether it's New Age or Christianity or Gnosticism or Kabbalism or whatever, right? There's always something sort of informing it. And so I was able to kind of look at that and go, and suddenly I had a different approach to my cartoons that had maybe a different level to them that I could slip in to the cartoons. And so it almost led me, you asked about politics, it almost led me to not fully apolitical, but in a way, I'm pointing to things that are beyond political. And I think that's where the joy and the fun of it all is, because it's just too easy to make fun of like Donald Trump or Nancy Pelosi. It's like, you know, how easy is it to do that, right? It's too easy.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that a lot of people who come out of the left, I came out of the left, I'm from Vancouver, you know, it's similar to Seattle, San Francisco, LA, all of those places where progressivism is the norm.
Right.
You know, I never even knew any right-wing people. I never knew religious people, hardly at all in any case. And it's easy. I see a lot of people coming out of that, like, I never know how to describe this in a way that doesn't annoy me. So I'm like the anti-woke group of people. And often they end up on the other extreme. So they go from this extreme dogma to the other extreme where they're like, rah, 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 Trump. And I don't have a problem with Trump supporters per se. But, you know, I've also tried to kind of just stay in the middle, not even in the middle, just like nowhere. I'm trying to stay open-minded and critical. But I, having spent so much time criticizing the left and so much time criticizing feminism, like from a feminist perspective, I get pinned as right-wing. And I get, like you said, blamed like, oh, well, if you're gonna attack the Democrats, then you're supporting Trump or you're supporting the Republicans. And it's like, like what? That's really an oppressive way to look at this, and I think really unproductive.
Yeah, and unnuanced. It's like, and that serves that system, which I think is pretty much reduced down to sort of like a WWE wrestling format of politics, where these events happen, and then the stars or the you know, the villains show up, and they come down and they jump in the ring, and we all watch from the crowd because it's kind of funny and fun, and we get to say we won, and there's that tribal almost element there. But like you said, what it does is it produces a system where if you have a nuanced position on a particular topic, it's almost impulse for someone to just put you in a category that fits. Like if you question, let's say, modern medicine, all the words we can't say, suddenly you're anti the scientific method or something like that. It's very easy. I almost have compassion at this point, even though I think that's a really a dumb, irrational way to think. I almost see it as like the symptom, like that way of thinking is a symptom of how everything's presented. And again, keep in mind, most of us, the 80% of us that are mostly consumers and just kind of want to plan our next week, we are kind of given a guidance system through the screens. And those screens are mostly mainstream media, whether it's left or right. And their job is to maintain the format of a sort of a false dialectic, or let's say a lower binary ping pong game, I like to call it, where you could be on a side. And then if you question one side, then maybe you're just, you know, outcast, and now you have to go to the other side. I'm at the point where I'm sort of like an outcast of both. Why are you making fun of Ben Shapiro? Why do you make fun of Jordan Peterson? Because I'm pointing to something that to me, my barometer is like truthfulness, and to me, a higher good. In other words, I can't just go full libertarian because I can't argue anything goes. I'm a father of three, 2 girls. I can't pretend that I'm just like this total freedom, like, because people think liberty itself is just, it sounds right that liberty is just good in itself. But then I'm like, well, I've spent enough time in Los Angeles, 15 years as a hedonist, to know that no, just because you have freedom, it doesn't tell you what you ought not and ought do, right? There's a deeper thing that we're following here as human beings that actually transcends law. And that's where it gets me into trouble with the right and the left, is I'll like, you know, snipe both sides, and people will be like, why are you shouldn't do this. This is like infighting. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, I just don't care.
I'm not here to protect your movement.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't even like kind of given up on that. The term itself, kind of like a movement. There's this like instinct to rebel against something. But then I'm, you know, maybe it's just fatherhood, or just I'm getting older, where I'm just seeing things as they are. And I realize there is a nature to human beings that seems to be consistent and repetitive. And some people accuse me of being like pessimistic because of that view. And I just go, no, I'm not here to like, I've given up on this notion of like, I'm here and I only have about 80 years, God willing, and I'm going to change the world. Like, I don't have that impulse anymore in me. It's a form of being realistic, but also understanding that you can change aspects of the world, but that's local. Like your world is local. We live mostly locally, right? But yet we have this weird dynamic with this a world level media system. So we're watching the world, and then our reactions are in response to what's happening in the world. But then our day to day emotions, everything we do is really at the local level. We wake up, we're human beings. We take our time with things. We are present with our loved ones. Like, and this battle seems to be inconsistent. And I think, I don't know what I haven't watched enough of your backlog stuff. You know, and are you in Canada still?
No, I'm in Mexico.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the whole like
I took off.
Yeah, good.
During COVID.
Yeah, that's
like,
great work.
Nope.
Great work.
Nope.
Good impulses, good instincts. Yeah, I was going to say that demonstrated that people can operate even at the local level, inconsistent with their direct reality and consistent with a false reality that's through the screen. Now, I get the irony that we're on a screen right now and people are going to watch us on a screen, but I saw like a comic once. It was a guy holding an umbrella. It's beautiful out, but his screen says it's raining, right? It was so simple. And that kind of embodied fully that whole last 2 years. And I don't know your experience. It must have been even worse where you were. But looking out and just going, wow, this is really like mass level hypnosis. Like, anything I know about hypnosis is like, and they have all the cues for hypnosis, like when you begin, and then they tell you when to snap out. It's just different words and different ways of doing it. But I saw that pretty clearly. And that actually frightened me more than any constructed idea of like, I'm going to die from something, whether it's like a bomb or whatever. The mind thing is way more fascinating and horrifying to me, honestly.
Yeah, and that point that you've made about the image of, you know, looking outside and seeing that it's sunny outside or whatever, and then looking at your phone and it says it's raining. I mean, that was so my experience, particularly on leaving Canada for Mexico. So, you know, I left Canada. So I've been living in Mexico it'll be 2 years in January. And so when I left, it was just before the vaccine mandates took hold. It was when they were just about to shut the borders down and prevent Canadians from traveling. And I was like, I am getting the fuck out of here. Like, I'm going to get stuck here. And I was freaked out. And this is the best decision I ever made in my whole life. But when I got here to where I'm living, which is like a small, very touristy, but very small beach town, it was like COVID didn't exist. We were all operating as normal. It was wonderful. You know, like people were out partying and having fun and sharing food and drinks and joy and dancing and spitting in each other's mouths, you know, and I was just, and everyone in Canada, all of my friends back in Canada, almost all of them, you know, like there were a few who were not down, but they were terrified. And they thought that everybody else was terrified like them. They thought the entire world was living like them, locked inside their apartments, not touching. Like, I felt like I was being tortured just for the lack of human touch and social contact. And, you know, for people to do that to themselves and go along with it. And then for so many of them to say, I don't know if you notice this in your communities or friend groups, but it's not that bad, like I don't mind staying home. Like got all my stuff here, or even like, oh, I like wearing a mask. It keeps my face warm. I think I'm just going to keep doing this forever.
I've had one person do that I know for certain, and I was just like, wow, like that level. It just shows that we are in like a interesting way where it shows that we're adaptable, which is like a good trait, but you could adapt to something totally demonic in my view. Like, so adaptation, being able to be versatile, it can be a useful thing, but it doesn't tell us when we ought to use it and not. And that's a great point of that. Our own adaptability is sometimes at our own expense and in favor of people who actually want to control every aspect of your life through some sort of centralized command module system, which I think I have no doubt when we put all the pieces together that that's what COVID was all about. Introducing a variety of new paradigms and systems, money, genomics, the platform of turning your body into an operating system, your immune system into an operating system, and then also the centralization of all supplies. So suddenly you shut everything down, you have a legitimate reason in their rhetoric. And then what do you have? You have the big corporations come in and say, don't worry, we've made a partnership with the government, and we're going to totally take over anything you need. And so Amazon stays open. We saw it. We saw the whole system and what they were trying to. I think they got a little greedy. I think they got a little aggressive and to their own detriment, because people started to see it and they were like, well, this isn't really fair. Like, the largest companies stay open and get to deliver everything that you need, but these smaller ones don't. Like, I used to go to Mary for my milk or whatever, and now I can't. And Amazon's like, don't worry, we're going to fly a drone to you. It's going to be a beautiful, smart city. And that's that. I don't know if you've covered that stuff, but I'm fascinated with that and how that sort of undergirds all of this stuff. The World Economic Forum is usually the one that's kind of presented, but really all the companies, if you look at it, the technocratic sort of corporate elite are competing for positioning for that smart city concept where they deliver and provide all things. And then us, the consumer, it turns into what I call a paying a membership to your own life. Because we have lifetime memberships to things, right? And you think, oh, I have a membership to this, I have a membership to that, a subscription-based system. Well, if you think about it, if a company like Microsoft or Amazon or Highway or Siemens are BlackRock are the delivery for all things, they can just give you crypto or UBI and say, okay, your compliance to our system is your currency now. Like and think about this, turning a city into a platform. Like, we always think about platforms. You've been kicked off platforms, right? I'm sure.
Yeah, I was banned from Twitter in 2018.
Yeah. So getting banned, and there's TOS and there's community guidelines. Well, we look at platforms like Twitter as like these little technological interfaces, which, that's kind of what we're limited to defining it as. But these larger companies see the future of cities themselves, locations, as platforms. So that you agree to the terms of service of the platform called a geographic location, right? And then what do? You trade your civil liberties. You trade willingly because you sign, right? We all signed the thing for YouTube, the TOS and stuff. And that's like, I don't mean to blackpill, but that's really what they're after. And it's not a theory. I mean, someone like Patrick Wood, who wrote Technocracy, Hard Road to Technocracy, he lays out all of this, all of the policies, all of the companies involved. And it's not like some dreamed up, I am a tinfoil hat wearing nut job, but this particular thing is like not theoretical.
I'm glad that you explained all that, because I was going to ask you what you thought the point of all this
I think
COVID stuff was, like all the COVID theater, all the nonsensical mandates, all the like gaslighting, all the like mental torture of you're free, you're not free, you're free, you're not free. We're going to lift these things in 2 weeks. Oh, no, another 2 weeks. Oh, no, another 2 weeks. I think it's like abusive, right?
It's organized demonic torture. It's like worse, I think, from my view. It's like, what was that mechanism where people waterboard you? Or let's use a less gruesome one, like sleep deprivation, right? Oh, okay, Megan, you can go to just close your eyes, and then they wake you up, and then you're like, wait, what? Like, and then let you sleep a little bit, and then wake you up again. But the irony is that it's flipped. Like, there are these people who we would actually call asleep, right? And they just keep putting people back to sleep, and I think it's kind of like a proof of concept, which is kind of frightening in itself, that they can, with a push of a button, deliver one narrative through all of the veins of media through the world, right? Luckily, there's still places like you are that just don't get it, or they do, and they're like, this isn't reality. Like, I don't talk to the machine. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and who doesn't go along in general? It's like the poor and the working class,
right?
Because they can't go along.
Right.
Like, first of all, like, I think in Mexico, I mean, Mexico is a huge place, so I should speak to where I live and not the entirety of Mexico. Things are quite different in like Mexico City, for example. But like, I think that in Mexico, their family is way more valued. Community is more valued. Celebration is more valued. Tradition. There's, a lot of people, most people here are religious, Mexicans in any case. And people are poor and working class, and they can't just stop working and go hide in their houses. I don't think that they would anyway, but that's something that only a privileged class of people can do.
Right. It's like being weak is like a luxury. It's like, the poor are strong and resilient, and that's just in their nature. Right. And I'm luckily have been middle to lower my whole life. And so when I see things that are just not just using discernment, you go, this something's off about this deception alone. But then you go, well, what am I willing, what position am I in to bite on this narrative and play this game? And even if they give you the props, which, by the way, they gave you all the props, and you're playing out basically a play, right? But like you said, the poor can't. There's no time or effort allotted to play a game. Like, you have to wake up and find food and then like do all this stuff. And so it's weird to look at that perspective and go, well, everyone's always like arguing about poverty and stuff, but there are certain aspects of that life that really give you some liberty. And we don't usually think of liberty that way. We think of it like liberty means I have rights to get things and do stuff. And really the constraints often give people some liberty too. It's just like a different form. And so, yeah, they were free of it. Small towns, poorer towns, they're pretty much free of it because they're not
rural places.
Yeah. And there was no reward system for them anyway. This kind of fraudulent donation system, right, of special Karunka money. That was definitely a part of how people started participating, like businesses or entire states, of course, given an incentivized monetary reward system, right, for documenting tallies, whether it's like calling a motorcycle accident a COVID death or just saying, oh, there's this many cases. Well, did you know in 2018, the World Bank did a World Bank pandemic exercise for like a coronavirus, right? And or do you want me to use code language for that? I forget.
No, it's okay.
Okay. And it was basically like an insurance scam where they just get a bunch of donations and then they make a list of potential recipients, and you have to meet the criteria of the numbers. So the statistics determine whether or not a country is going to get the pandemic fund. And I think that was kind of in play too. Now that fund, the World Bank, was only about 50 million. So that's not actually a lot of money, on net balance, but it was used to demonstrate that you could actually acquire some massive fund from all the countries and all the printed fake money, and then orchestrate something such that particular countries get an amount of money based on their statistics of who, and we all know you can fudge statistics now, right? So, I mean, that's an interesting little weird gambling side gamble that I saw pop up that no one really talked about. But I assume that's going to be in play in the future as well.
Why do you think it is that so many people, I mean, one of the most depressing things about the past 2 years was maybe even actually the most depressing thing about the past 2 years was observing how many people go along and don't ask questions and can just accept different versions of reality based on what is fed to them, live with cognitive dissonance, like, and accept these conveniences in exchange for their rights and freedoms, in exchange for the ability to speak the truth and see the truth and say what that truth is, to like acknowledge reality. And in exchange for things like money from the government, which I guess is like, I get that people want money, people need money. But like, oh, I can get my groceries delivered on an app. I can get my dinner delivered on an app. I can like make sex appointments on an app. I can obviously stream TV and get access to like any information. You know, you can access almost anything on the internet. But like you say, what's happening is that you've handed over your sovereignty and autonomy to corporations. Like
Right.
You can't get a cow. You don't know how to do that. You can't hunt for your food. You don't have access to, now you're wholly dependent.
Right. Yeah, I think that's
this technocracy.
Absolutely. I think that's a part of it, is that, and I think it's like we just discussed, it's peculiar to modernity. So the developed places that do have these convenience delivery systems, which in my worldview would be catering to people's direct appetites, not to their spiritual needs or anything like that, not appealing to their moral convictions, appealing to their wants and desires on the spot, right? A customized system that just delivers whatever you need, whatever you want, potentially in the future from a drone, right? That delivers it in your little Amazon, pod cubicle, right? And so I think what you're pointing to is that, yeah, the people trade their conveniences because we've been so dependent already. I think what the last 2 years showed is that we were already dependent on these things, like to a fault. And that the moment something changes and you realize, wow, I don't have an alternative supply for that. I don't have an alternative source. We've been outsourcing so much of our labor. And this is something maybe you've touched on, with this tension between men and women, is that men, especially in the modern world, have outsourced their labor. And our labor is such an important, at least from my perspective as a man, it's such an important identifier. And it's a way we connect to not only other men, but to our family and our a sense of providing and all of these things that it's something worth taking pride in, and not in like a sinful way, but like you appreciate your labor, you appreciate working. And that's this thing about when you mentioned the poor people, they actually like their work, right? They're not, it's not because it gives them all these perks and they can now get a gold watch and a new iPhone. But in the consumerist world that we're in, the modern world, a lot of these things we've just been used to. We've just been so used to it. And suddenly you cut the flow or turn the valve down and everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get my stuff. And then you have them, you have us, right? If you desire stuff, right, above something else, you're going to be a slave to whoever's providing you the stuff. And so their goal, the corporate, the technocratic goal, is to create, I don't know if you ever heard of like the John Calhoun mouse experiment, where they make a mouse utopian experiment where they give the mice everything they need, everything. They don't have to do anything. Well, it goes really bad, by the way. Not to say we're rats, but if we're going to make the correlation between some general outcomes and behavior, when you give everyone what they want, they become unfulfilled. Ironically, you think well, no, how could that be? Fulfillment is getting stuff. No, it's not. We all know this now. I mean, people our age know this. Younger idealists don't really know this, but that's not what fulfills us. We can have a moment with our mother or our sister or our loved ones, in a single moment, that is more valuable than any on-demand movie, box of chips, whatever, right? So it's the whole like smart city thing, and this attempt to subvert the human value, the human value of love and connection with, and swap it with conveniences. It's on a broken premise. So that's good news that it's broken, right? We can reject it. It's going to fail because that's not actually what human beings desire. And I realized that in the last 2 years too. So there's been sort of a blessing, even though it, like you categorized it as like the most depressing part, which is true, but it also reveals something that was necessary to reveal. Like we needed to see how dependent we actually were. And what's funny is this whole like build back better thing. Well, people like homesteaders and people who are trying to find connections of different people who supply their own stuff, suddenly build back better has been co-opted by like the people rejecting that paradigm, the technocratic version of that. And so I've seen that all around me, and I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a helpful way to look at it. I mean, it's true that one of the things that was revealed to me is how dependent we are and how dependent I was on easy access to all of these things, and living somewhere where I don't have easy access to those things, to really much of anything, besides like tacos and Mexican moonshine. Like, you know, I'm much happier, and I think that the people in this community are much happier. It seems to me that almost all of my friends back in Vancouver are depressed and almost don't realize that they're depressed. Like they become so used to this life and they don't know what's missing because they have everything, and they don't realize that what's missing is community and purpose and fulfillment, and they don't really know how to get that other than through superficial things.
Yeah, consumption. And an interesting little correlation is that if you have everything, what is appreciation? Like you just described, like not having access to things. So you not only appreciate what you have because you know it's already sort of scarce, but then if you get something for some reason, someone visits you and brings some, you know, trashy, you know, American food or something that
beef jerky, man.
You love hating.
I can't get beef jerky here. I'm like, I have so much. Every time I can get some beef jerky, it's such an amazing gift.
Yeah, exactly. And it just, and like myself, I can actually walk to a place where the whole rack, I'm almost disenchanted because there's too many choices. I don't know. Like I'd rather have it from someone who just shot an elk, right? Who are like, I shot this. And it's, you realize that scarcity can be sort of like a gift in itself. And that's why I usually don't go down these like very, because I'm in the truther sphere, right? You know, there's overlapping realistic concerns with really dramatic, overreactive craziness, right? And I have to navigate through all of this. But this notion that of a looming terrible thing, it's not a great way to operate either, right? Even though it's possible, I'm seeing that because I've gone through those phases where I go so hardcore truther level conspiracy where I can't even function because my creative mind is creating all of these possibilities of the future, and that doesn't make you a better husband or wife or father or sister or brother. And so that's something I kind of recently been calling out more among my own sort of overlapping communities, is that learning appreciation and learning that you can't just tie yourself to the sinking ship just so you can be right about it. Oh, see, I told you. This whole thing, like I told you so. You know, I have this one meme where it's like the end of the world, and you know, all the apocalyptic biblical signs are all depicted in the background. It's all chaos, and the guy's in the front with his phone. He's like, I totally called this, right there. That part of I don't know if you know who you interact with in your daily activities online or whatever, but in my world, the truther sphere gets filled with sort of like the pride of being right about all of this terrible stuff, right? You know, and I don't think that's a great place to be. I don't think that's fulfilling either, because okay, be right about it. Now what?
Well, and that's like, okay, like,
yeah.
Like, okay, yeah, now what?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I wanted to circle back a bit to what you were talking about in terms of men's labor, because I think that it seems that what we've done as humans, or what many of us have done as humans, is to give away everything that we're good for,
mhm.
and to reject everything that's ever provided us with meaning in life and purpose. Do you have any idea where that began, where that came from?
Well, I take a Christian view, so I think our fallen nature as men and women, the parts of us that desire wants and needs, I think it does go back to and it correlates to what you said about trading conveniences. I think we're tempted to outsource our labor, even if it ironically removes our relationship to our own work and value, and our relationship to others. Because you know, as a man, you go, because I was a metalsmith, right? I'm a professional expert jewelry maker. I don't do it now because I've gone full comics, but having that ability to make stuff, it actually is what bonds my conversations with other people who like making stuff, whether it's another jeweler or a metalsmith or a carpenter. We then talk about that. And then there's this connection there that wouldn't be there if we were talking about a product that was exported, right? You know, that or outsource. Like, oh yeah, Ming Wing made this, right? And that's the conversation, right? Oh, cool saw. You know, so this kind of connection, I think, when we reject our own, when we remove our own labor, we remove a part of our value that actually has a pragmatic element, but I also believe it has a spiritual element. That our fruits, you know, when we bear our fruits, it doesn't mean just children, but the things we do in the world, our works in the world, are a part of that's what connects us to each other, right? But now our works, there are substitutes, like you and I are doing works right now, and so it does create bonds. It helps to see your face. I don't think it works as much in the text sort of sphere of things, blogging and that, but I think that people are desiring their connection to their fruits and their labor, and maybe they don't know it, like you said. You're the city people that you left. Maybe they don't know what's missing because they're not given the framework that that's even a thing, right? Because they couldn't think of, like, what do you mean not get delivery, or what do you mean not get these push button things to give me my life? And but yeah, it's a really good point, and I think it's a really important, deeper level topic about human beings that it doesn't really get addressed. It gets addressed in other circles who appeal to some theology or metaphysics and stuff. But in the world of just consumerism, it's almost gone, right? It's like, you know, fulfillment is like likes and shares and like I got on this podcast, like self-congratulation and stuff like that. And for women, I think it's worse for women because the whole system of liberty through objectifying yourself is really been a detriment. And that's horrifying as because I have two daughters, is where, you know, that's not that's not like a connection, a deep connection to your fruits. That's just you as a product, right? You are the product. It's not that you created you didn't create your body, right? You didn't like do all of it, right?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with you. Like those likes that you're getting online have nothing to do with you.
Right. So
I mean, yeah, and sorry.
No, that's it. It was just that connection is so important because when you say has nothing to do with you, that's what we desire. So that it's like it's not in a narcissistic way. It's like it's our energies. It's like I could talk to you or anyone else, and we can kind of get, oh, I like this energy, but we can't pinpoint it to a physical thing, right? There's no like physical essence of Megan that I can grab and go, this is you, right? And that's kind of where our connections last. It's not just this materialistic. I think it's materialism if we get down to it. It's this concept that matter is all there is, right? And people are being taught this. That's all there is. Just matter in motion. We're just chemicals. This is not a healthy position, right? Because our connections are way more. We experience way more than the description of things occurring. And I think that dialogue and narrative has kind of been pushed too, and I think it does have a correlation to your example of like the likes aren't identical to you. The shares are not identical to who you are.
And women, I mean, I feel so bad for the younger generations who've grown up online, you know, like I didn't have the internet when I was a teenager. And so my brain was able to develop without that like addiction to those kinds of dopamine hits. And what people have been handed really are dopamine hits. Like it's people think it's like they feel good for a minute when their meal shows up. They feel good for a minute when they get a like on their post. They feel good for a minute when they get a match on a dating app. And I mean, I have a really big problem with dating apps. I mean, I hate them and I find them disgusting. And the few times that I've been coerced into trying to use them when I was single, you know, I think I, you know, would try for half an hour and then I'd be like, I'm not enjoying this. I'm wasting my life. I'm literally throwing away time into the ether for nothing. This is making me feel depressed. I'm never going to go on a date with any of these people because I don't know them. I'm not going to go out on a date with a stranger from the internet ever. I don't need to. That's not how I like to meet people. But what I was told by my friends is, oh, you should try it. Like, it'll make you feel good about yourself. You get all this attention. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Kind of crack are you on? Like, I don't want that. That doesn't make me, I don't need that. I don't need that. They're strangers who don't know me. Why would that make me feel good about myself? Because somebody who knows nothing about me clicked like, maybe I'll fuck you. Yeah. On a date, on an app.
Yeah, it's a dopamine, like you said, but it also includes cortisol. So the fear part, the part that gets you angst and like fearful and I got to do something. I think we're getting pumped with both of those. Like the news cycle is like this dissonant frequency that never resolves, by the way. You ever listen to music? I don't know if you play music, but there's dissonance and consonance is the resolve. Dissonance is these weird sort of tension chords, but they only are useful because they lead to a resolve, like an open G chord that's just beautiful. And you go, oh, I feel like I landed home. I'm so glad that resolve happened. Well, the news and then the cycles and all the things we're scrolling through never give us resolve. They give us like tension, build up. And then I think what you described is like, if you go on with one of those apps, it gives you a counterfeit resolve. Like, oh, I got a like, oh, I matched. What does that mean about me and this person? Oh, they like me. Like it's like this, like, but I'm so glad you see through it. I think hopefully every woman listening goes, yeah, well, that's ridiculous. Like, or at least call it what it is. Like, oh, I'm doing this thing and it's horrible and it's all about my self-gratification. At least categorize it honestly, right? Don't tell a story about it and then like make up all of these reasons why it's good. I love that. I think people are actually also desiring that, to go back to meeting people organically. You know, you accidentally bump shoulders with someone or on a run. This is what it is to be human. This other thing is like us being a computer and then holding a computer and then somehow trying to make sense of the human connection through this medium. That's not really human, right? It's like this other, by the way, our profiles, like, you know, your girlfriends would be like, no, you got to use a better picture. And don't say that. So there's this construct of you. And I always joke that like dating apps should just have all the baggage, like outright, where it's just called baggage connect or something, where it's just like, I had one divorce, like I drank a little too much.
Your childhood?
Yeah, exactly.
What's your relationship to your parents?
Yeah, they have to unlock that. Yeah. They pay more to unlock the really darker ones. And that's at least honest. And again, the reason that doesn't work is because when we get to know people, it's a gradient of intimacy. It's not just this like automatic, oh, we have this like thing, like a fake connection.
Tick, we have these things in common. I like books too.
Right. It's like
nobody likes books anymore.
Yeah. We're not like an avatar with these attributes that just because they match means something, right? Because because there are mismatched people who fall in love. That means love and the act of love
all the time.
Has nothing to do with this like, oh, we're so similar and we matched. It's like, you know, the voting systems that go through and they see all the dots and they're like, okay, you belong over here. And it's not like that. But, you know, this modern tech stuff really does want to, at least the people producing it, do want to see the human being as just as the product, but also as this gold mine of data, right? In that case, it's behavioral data where they can actually collect all that data about your behavior and that it's valuable. But I think another end goal especially with this last 3 years is getting in, I call it inner space. They want your internal data. They want in your biological data, because because your body in a way, right, is a mechanical thing, and it solves problems, right? And I think people, not to take it a full turn, but it really is something I think about a lot, is that all this like crypto stuff and this kind of like mining rigs, these computers that solve problems. Well, it's not too far in advance or too crazy, because it's been patented to turn the human body into a mining system that solves problems, that keeps a ledger alive. And I think we as humans need to reject this, because our existence here has very little to do with just the mechanics and the motions of what we do and what our body does, right? And certainly tying that to some currency ledger where you can't participate in currency without submitting your internal body as like some machine that keeps the currency afloat. I mean, this stuff is really sickening, and it's not even that crazy, right? I've already gotten accustomed to people calling me crazy and just waiting 5 months. I don't know about you.
I mean, all these conspiracy theories turned out to be science.
Yeah, they have to like cross it out. Yeah,
the science. Sorry. Trust the science.
Trust the science. The method that doesn't actually tell us anything, because people have to tell us things. Oh, I wanted to mention that about being sick. Something else that happened, and you probably noticed this right away, is that we were almost sold wholesale that getting sick is wrong. Like, you're not supposed to get sick. And I'm like, well, no, getting sick sucks a lot of times, but to say that we shouldn't get sick is to treat the symptoms of getting sick and the experience as the cause. And I think they've effectively conflated the two for a lot of people, where they go, oh, a fever, that's getting sick. No, the fever is the response, right? The fever isn't the illness. It's your body actually doing what it should do and responding. And I think they sold that package and people bought it. And that was also a scary part, because you mentioned the scariest part is that convenience trade-off of your autonomy and dependency or whatever for convenience. I think that the other part is people I talk to still to this day are like, no, we got to eliminate all sickness. And I'm like, you're crazy. Yeah. Like that's
not how you keep people healthy.
No.
Right. I mean, what we did with COVID was just stave off some people from catching COVID for a little bit. And then we built up immunity and it's fine. And it was never that dangerous to begin with, except for a certain segment of the population. But especially like when we're talking about kids, like this idea that your kid shouldn't ever be getting sick, when your kid is much better equipped to fight this than probably you are, certainly your parents. I mean, and yeah, again, depending on your health, whether or not you're obese, have diabetes, and so on and so forth. But like this, like if your kid's sick, they have to stay home, like put them all in masks, give them these experimental shots. I mean, I don't know what planet these parents were living on. It's like, it's a kid. It's supposed to be sick and germy. Like that's what kids have, snotty faces.
Right. Yeah. You're supposed to be, you're
supposed to be building up your immunity when you're a kid. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. A healthy kid, you should be disgusted with them pretty much when you look at them. You'd be like, yeah, that's gross to me too. Cause I grew up in the Catskills in New York, and I grew up on this old dirty farmhouse where most of my life was just outside, right? Like I never was subject to a ton of shots. Even then, I'm 41 now. So that was when the regimen of like vaccines was like maybe 8 or 10. Now it's like 80. But even then, you know, you're outside, dirty, playing in the dirt, messing with animals, just like everything you can do. You're filthy. And
Yeah.
I always
Collecting buckets full of
right,
slugs and
right,
snails and
yeah,
insects and
just
chopping up bugs.
yeah, yeah, making them fight and this stuff and this stuff is like gone away, especially, and we should always make this distinction. It's like uh, how the world is portrayed to the masses is an image of the modern world, right? And the cities and all. And it's funny is that they take up the least amount of the world physically. It's like, take New York. New York City dictates the state of New York. New York City is 0.008% of the geography of New York State. Isn't that insane? But the it's so populated that any sort of narrative about the reality is governed by the most populated area who has all the media apparatuses and all the money and all the pull. And I always remind people, and lucky for you, you live in the reality that's distinct from the mainstream presentation of reality, because you're like, oh, that's all happening. Well, not really. Not really. Like, is it really happening? No, not here. And I'm here. So why would I live my life here based on some other place coming through a screen? And I think that's part of this weird control trick. I don't know to what extent they're aware of doing it, but that seems to be a really interesting psychological manipulation that works for some people. It doesn't work on me. And I try to get people out of it. I just ask, like, okay, like my example with the Karunka thing was, I remember the first month where they kept showing us pictures and visuals from China of like old people falling and fainting in like this, public or whatever. And that's like the burned traumatic thing that they have to mind control, hit you with the trauma.
You might drop dead in a grocery store.
Right. You might see this. It might happen to you. And so it's almost like, if I tell you there's a spider on you, it's natural for you to freak out and do a weird, awkward, like scream and go like that. Right. Well, I feel like that's like a good analogy for this, is like they showed the boogeyman, the spider, and everyone just naturally went like, oh, get it off of me. I don't know what it is. But then, you just wait a little. And I was like, okay, there's no one falling. Like, I kept using that example. I was like, there's no one falling. Like, what was that? It's like, you think about China and now they have like 700,000 cameras. Well, how hard is it for them to just type in a search for people fainting on security cameras, and suddenly they have 200, maybe 1,000 options for people fainting that they can just feed to the Western media? Like, because people would be like, Jimbob, well, what do you think that was then? I'm like, people fainting. Like, it was people fainting, but
people faint.
But you're just like assigning. And that was another trick there, where any kind of sickness or symptoms, they immediately put into the column of corona symptoms. Every single one, just pile them in. Right. And people were like, yeah, did you hear now diarrhea is corona? Like anything. I have this funny concept.
Like, is this the first time you've ever had diarrhea?
Yeah. They're like, yeah, but it's different this time. I really think it was different. And you're like, okay. So now you're just, now you want it to be the case, right? I'm sure you witnessed that too, where people were like defending. They were like, no, this was a different clogged nose. Like, I had a different clogged nose.
I was really tired.
Yeah.
Really,
I was really
tired.
And I'm like, I'm always tired. Like, yeah. But in the future, it sounds like a joke, but I think it's possible, where I thought of this concept where they present a new sickness. They do this all over again, but this time it's like very mysterious. And one of the symptoms is not being in fear, where you're like, no, I'm not really, I'm kind of joyful right now and things are going really well. And they're like, that's it. That's the thing. And a bunch of crazy masked people point at people who are just jolly, joyful, laughter, maybe singing down the street. And that's one of the symptoms, right? And that's not too far off from the actual virus we all experience. And one of the comics that I did that people used a lot was, the girl was asking her mom, what's so contagious that they're doing all this stuff. And she says, happiness and joy. Right. Because that's the real contagion, that they actually were able to keep down, right? Flatten the curve. Yeah. Flatten the curve for
Life.
joy and life and laughter and connectivity.
Living your life and doing the things that are important to humans and bring meaning to your life.
Right. And it worked for a lot of people. And now I don't know what your take is on all this like apology stuff and we're, you know, amnesty. I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't get any. Maybe
nobody apologized to me for sending me hysterical messages on Instagram because I posted a story of what I was actually doing in my life, which is having fun and socializing. How can you post these stories when we're back here stuck in our apartments? And I'm like, you should leave your apartment.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like I would ask people when people would be like, people are dying. And I would be like, do you know a person who has died from this virus?
I asked that too.
The nurses are all overwhelmed. They're all saying like, please stay home. Who? What nurses? Do you know who? Like, I understand that you're reading this online, but is this something that you're observing in your real life? Because I'm not observing it.
Right.
And I'm not saying like it wasn't happening. Like I know that people died because of this virus, but this people and like why are you so averse to your reality? Why do you trust yourself so little?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think that's like you hit them with the weight of potentially being guilty of something. And then they just run with whatever the function is. They're basically doing an operating system. Like people behave how the world occurs to them. So if you're a big pharma company, you know, tied to like a war machine, right? Some neocon war machine or whatever, you want people to, you want the world to occur to people that benefits what you're going to sell them, right, in response to how the world's occurring. And so all those people you're talking to, and I have had the exact same experience. I just name one person. I'm at this job. I was at this job and I'm like, no one, where are the people falling? Like there should be a lot more happening based on our response, by the way, like the disproportionate response to reality. Right.
And and you tested positive. Are you okay?
Right. And they're like,
was
no,
it okay?
Yeah. They're like, yeah, but it could have been.
I have long COVID.
Yeah. Long COVID. Yeah. Long form. Yeah.
I'm still really tired.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's fascinating. That shows me that it's that mental manipulation is one of the biggest tools, like, and weapons that you don't really need authoritarian force, right? You don't really need the soldiers that we all see in the footage, right? In the past showing up on the shores. You just need a main basically a concentrated media apparatus that can deliver one message. And this is what's different about our era is that one message can hit everybody who has a phone in one day. Like, think about that. You and I grew up where we had slinkies and we had to draw the book or whatever. We didn't have the scrolling machine. We didn't have access to an external world that was that far away other than like the newspaper. But so this introduction of a screen and that we mostly look at our screen and not the physical reality. But this has never happened before. Like, Never in human history did most of the people in the world, absent the poor countries who almost, God bless them, don't have these luxury problems in a way. They have other problems, but they never in the world did you have an apparatus that can deliver a single narrative to every single human being who can receive it. That's an incredible power. And it's not like these people don't know they have it. You know, whoever invests in the media, whoever invests in the narratives, I think it's like a pay to play thing where you buy in, like, you know, oh, I want to push this narrative. Can I buy into the vein? Like you buy an artery of the media apparatus. Right. And from that perspective, you can start to see why. Is it really that surprising that every main network, right, left, has a big pharma exec on their board, right? That's not surprising to me. Like, no. And both sides do it. Like, you know, there's no based authorized mainstream media, right? That, oh, Tucker Carlson, like I always get it from the right where they're like, yeah, but at least they're fighting for, and I'm just like, no, you don't understand. Like they're all jeopardized with the money exchange. Like, you know, they want to keep their status and what they're doing. And I don't know about you. I mean, your status must have elevated to a certain point. My Instagram hit like 115,000, which to me is like a huge accomplishment for what I do. Just little cartoons, but that was gone in a second. I mean, that was just gone in a second. And so, but you understand when you see these other people who have these positions and maintain these narratives, like Ben Shapiro is like, I think we should, you know, everyone should probably get vaxxed. My wife is vaxxed. Everyone's vaxxed. You should just do what you have to do. And now he's like, I can't believe I've been lied to. And you're like, you're a little shit. Like, you little weasel. Like, that annoys me because almost like them figuring it out years later, it doesn't matter. Just like you said, your friend doesn't call you and go, oh, sorry, I totally ridiculed you and turned you into sort of like a pariah. Right. Like it's almost like they have goldfish brains, right? Now they're sold a war right on the screen. And so it's like, I'm almost done being annoyed and angry at them because they are in an operating system and they have to willfully exit from it. Right. You can't, like, I don't think you can save people. Like, I'm waking people up. Like I've given up on that. I don't think you can.
Too. I mean, it doesn't, because they see things and say things and they still don't wake up. You know, the same people who screamed at me and anyone else who dared fight for life and freedoms and rights and the truth, who are now turning around and saying, like, more people died of overdoses during the lockdowns than people died of COVID. And it's like, yes, that information has always been here. Many people were talking about it. You didn't listen. And now, so what is it that you're irate about? It's just a, like, how could you have let this happen? It's like, where were you? Like, where is your accountability? All of this, like, you know, we're sorry, except they're not really saying they're sorry. They're asking for amnesty, I suppose. Like, let's all call for peace. It's like, no. Like, it's not, I mean, I'm not gonna necessarily hate you, but I don't trust you. Right. And I'll never trust people who behave like this. I don't have respect for you.
It's like the abusive boyfriend who just keeps apologizing until the next time. And it's like, okay, it's not about apologies. It's about, okay, nothing you say right now, including an apology, is going to make me less on guard with the next headline, right? That comes out in this direction where you got to do this stuff or else we're going to take your job. And, you know, you can't, you know, move in transportation without getting a jabby jab or something. I mean, I hope at least some people, even if they're silent about it, maybe they feel like shameful about how they treated their family members. Yeah. I'm okay with them not even apologizing. I just hope that that's in there, that kernel is in there for them the next time around, because they will do something similar. Maybe it won't be the same format. They will. The people who do want the companies and because they is very, people hate when people use the word they. So I'll be more specific. A collection of nations who work together with larger companies toward a certain goal, right? Whether it's a technocracy or whatever it be, a smart city, total control over food supply, let's say, they will create a new narrative, right? Will make you so afraid of eating vegetables or meat or whatever it is. Yeah.
Right. It's happening with meat. It's happening with climate change.
Right. Yeah. They're going to use, they actually tried climate change and they were like, they probably got in a room and like, this is not working fast enough. Like, it's just,
I mean, some people are being hysterical. I guess like Gen Z is hysterical about climate change. I have friends who are hysterical about climate change.
Isn't that so interesting? I call that the boogeyman movie machine, where there's a new episode basically, and you just deliver a new boogeyman, right? And we lived through, like, 9/11 and saw how you can just, okay, make this guy the boogeyman, like, dress him up a certain way, make him scary, put a vest on him with explosives. And it really does work for the normie consumer because they because if there's a boogeyman, they can also be a hero. So it's like a two-part thing where it's like choose your own adventure. Like they give you a set of circumstances with a villain, and then you get to go, well, who am I going to be now? And that's how they kind of shame people into fighting wars that are unjustified. I don't know, back in the day, I don't know if it was Vietnam or before, I think it was World War II. The women who would give white feathers to the men who refused to go off on a plane or a boat to fight. That was to shame them, to publicly shame them. There's always this sort of like ritual of public shaming, and that happens. And in this case, it was like the failure to wear a mask in public. If you wore the mask, you were virtuous. It's like getting an award.
Or
right?
It's you're an anti-vaxxer if you don't want to get the vaccine, or you're opposed to the mandates, or you're skeptical, you want more information about the vaccine before you make a decision. You're an anti-vaxxer, so you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
You're dangerous too.
Yeah. I had a friend who did research with like Freemasonry. He like went in and wanted to know all of it. He wasn't really interested in being a part of it, but he kind of went as an infiltrator. And he gave me like this interesting outline. I don't know if I can remember all of it, but it was basically the 6 or 7 steps to ritual, like initiation, basically. And one of the things was first you start with, some sort of narrative where something's an enemy or something like that. And so you have to get on board with there being an enemy. And then there was actually a ritual where you cover your mask and you give over your trust to whatever the rhetoric or this, in this case, like the purpose of what you're doing there, joining. And if you speak against it, you get totally ridiculed. So that's like heresy within the ritual process. And then I forgot there was a couple other things that were so parallel to the COVID thing. And I just was like, wow. Like I don't want to go too far to think that there are just like small groups of people who can effectively execute rituals at the world level. Cause I think that gives humans a little too much credit in their performance. But like you said, a lot of these people are willingly participating. So it's not like this, like, it's like, I don't know if you ever been to like a hypnosis thing where I remember doing one in like college. Cause I was just like, this is funny. And I remember a moment where I had the thought to rebel, and right at the tail end of the thought was, well, I can't do that because that'll embarrass him and I'll ruin the show for everyone. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a microcosm of the thought process, but I think that does exist on larger scale narratives where people participate and then they go, well, I can't really do that because then I'll get like outcasted and ridiculed from the group. And then I'll have ruined the thing. I'm so afraid of ruining the thing, whatever the thing is. And I think a lot of our friends and family kind of were like, well, yeah, it's a little weird and this stuff doesn't really make sense, but I don't want to be the stick in the mud. And then I get outcast and called a name. Right. And
I don't want to cause conflict. I don't want to cause drama. Yeah. Like, I don't want to make things like uncomfortable for people.
Yeah. And you and I and many people on our side of things are like, I will make things uncomfortable. Like, like I'll make it a goal. And that's what I've done, at least hopefully with the stuff that I do, like cartooning and commentary and stuff, is to throw a stick in the wheel of what's happening and get people to even stop for a moment. Because I think convincing people with information, we both know, is ineffective unless they're already broken. Clearly. Right? Already broke the paradigm. It doesn't work. But to get them to stop, I think sometimes we forget that that's necessary. You can't just give someone a folder, right? Like, look at 9/11 and all the things. I promise you're going to understand. You'll get there. No, people have to first connect with you. Then they have to trust you. Then you have to actually get them to stop and think. And you can't do it in a manipulative way. So, when you can't do it by beating them over the head with, you can't do it in a, like, I'm going to scream in your face. Like, you're exactly right. It's like, it's about building a relationship with somebody where you can have these conversations and you can kind of trust each other and nobody's just
you're not just reacting to each other and instantly defensive and instantly fighting back, but maybe having a more open conversation where you can sort of get somebody to hear what you're saying and see your perspective and maybe think about things differently.
Right. Right. Yeah. The trust thing is huge because that's like, maybe it's the online thing that makes us think, you could skip that part. You just go right to the rhetoric and the links, right? I just flood someone's DMs with links.
As like post your mantra over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Like, oh, if you look
Black
at the
Lives
links,
Matters, trust the science, trans women are women.
Well, sloganeering is also a really fascinating aspect of kind of what the era we're in too, because again, it becomes kind of effective because we naturally want to be a part of a group, and so like just like collective laughter or participation or going to like a music event and you're in a collective and you're all focused on one thing and you kind of something transcends about it. I think that's what slogans and mantras offer a little bit. It's more salesy version of it, but I remember being very vulnerable to mantras and slogans and yeah, so I do.
Yeah, I mean, I was too. I was heavily invested in movements from socialism to feminism. I guess I wonder, what role does satire play in all of this? Like, what you're doing is you're producing satire, jokes, comedy, which I think, we're seeing comedy being targeted by cancel culture, right? They're trying to shut down comedians for doing what comedians have always done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a big role. I don't glorify it in a way that it's like a life changer, like I'm changing the world. It's more like a drop in the bucket where people can either laugh for even a moment or stop. Like I said, they just stop with whatever side you're on, where you're now thinking about what's being presented. In my format, a single meme that can get people to think about the various layers of a single topic, I think is what people want. They want to stop for a second and look. And, satire now, I would have said a couple of years ago that the role of satire was to, reveal the truth of the matter that was unseen. Now I think satire, all you have to do is be an honest reporter of reality, and you're an effective satirical artist, because reality is so insane right now that if you just write and draw what it is without adding anything, you don't need to do a setup or a joke. You just depict what is the case, and that alone looks like satire now. But other than that, I think for me, it's like just making someone smile or think for a second about something, or revealing what I believe is like just true wickedness in the world, like shining a light on wickedness, but doing it in a way that's kind of funny or cute, because if you're too self-righteous about it, people run away. They don't like, you need a soft approach to the hard problems. In other words, you need to be soft in your approach, and you could still isolate and locate and turn the light on things that are very dark. And so I think we forget that sometimes, whether it's through satire. Comedy is interesting though, because I did some comedy for like 3 years in Los Angeles there, and it's night and day. And I think the war on comedy, people say, oh, you can't tell jokes anymore. I thought about that, and I think I got it a little more rigorous. I think it's that you're not allowed to tell true premises. Like, a premise is the setup for the joke. You say a line that's true that the audience goes, oh, that's so true. Sometimes the premise makes someone laugh, but usually it's getting the audience on board with a single truth statement. Then, like in comedy, you can't say single broad truth statements about any group of people now, like whether it's Jews or blacks or whites, or, well, you could do whites, but everyone else, you're not allowed to say the premise. Like, that's a huge distinction, because it's not just the joke that follows the premise that's not allowed. It's the premise itself, right? You can't tell the truth about a single broad topic and make it concise, because it's a judgment, right? And it's like, oh, that's a stereotype. Yeah. Oh, that's a generalization. Yes. Like, yes. Just like, how did we get convinced that being sick is something wrong? How did we get convinced that generalizations in themselves are just wrong, like immoral or reprehensible? This, I think, that notion of not making generalization has a really deep impact on comedy, because the premise is a generalization, right? It's not like some particular, very particular assessment of a thing. It's we're all on board here, right? And then it sucks because it rips off not just the comedian, but the target. This whole inclusivity. Hey, wake up time. The ultimate form of inclusivity is being the target of a joke in a group of people of diverse opinions, right? If you rip someone off of being
Which
the
is
target,
also a nice feeling. Like, I don't know why people are so scared of being picked on, because I like being picked on. And it's like, I always try to explain, like, I spend a lot of time with men, probably like a lot more time with men than with women. And I've always had close male friends. And I think that part of it is that, like, men like pick on each other. And I also like to do that. Like, I like to be sarcastic and make fun of people. And women are not as good at taking that kind of thing. And I like it. Like, it's like, I think it's really funny when not in a seriously mean way,
right.
But often what men will do to you, like what my male friends will do to you, is make fun of you for something that's like kind of true.
Right.
And you're like, oh yeah, I do that.
Yeah. If it's true. Yeah. It's humility. It's like, it's also a way of including you. Like, I always use the example of, like, you're on a playground and now you can't pick on people because it's ultimately bullying. Whereas actually, there's actually an unfolding of that event. So yes, sometimes it could just be cruel, but other times, in most cases, they're testing group scenarios, like individuals in groups. And it's kind of like a pecking order where you get picked on. And if you can come back and hold your ground, right, or take the joke, you're in. You're just in because you took the joke. And so protecting people, this whole kind of notion of protecting groups or individuals of any given, category from being the target of jokes is almost the worst, most cruel thing you can do to people, right? It's one of the most cruel, because you're actually excluding them from the common interactions of human beings in the format of comedy, which is designed to actually unite people of differences because of the truth that they're uniting. And so you have to be willing to be the target, right? And so that's like really unfortunate for comedy. But I also think it can't last, right? People desire comedy too. They almost need that release valve, right? When the pressure builds up. So it'll just maybe be delivered in a different way.
Or we'll come around. I mean, there's so much backlash towards cancel culture and woke culture that, maybe we'll come around, and this is cyclical. But I mean, I guess I was going to say, like, I think that in terms of your memes, I don't think that it is just about like making people smile, because I think what happens with the stuff that you produce is that you like look at it and you're like, ha, and then you're like, oh, wait, I don't get it. And then you have to like think about it a bit more. Like, even I've done that with stuff that, like, a friend of mine, I think it was Bridget Fetisi, actually. Do you know her?
No.
She sent me the I Like Your Pride shirt.
Oh, right. Which the recent comic one, or the actual one with the Pink Floyd logo?
I think she sent the one with the Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah, that's the original.
I didn't know there were two. I was just looking at the Pink Floyd one online.
That meme turned into so many. That became a format where people were just, when the woke corporate culture just caters to the gays, like, what's the month? But it doesn't matter. They just turn everything gay, like, for a month so they can, do their thing.
I think it's different in different places. In Vancouver, I think we do Pride in August or something like that.
Right.
July, maybe.
Yeah, that meme was just, it started with just the fact that people of our generation and older, the boomers, know Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon logo, the prism, the famous prism with the rainbow, is itself its own iconic thing for a certain generation. But the new generation, look at that, and that was part of the joke, is that one layer is that how disconnected the new generation is from our generation before, who valued, like, whatever, Pink Floyd, if you didn't like it or not, you knew what that meant at that time. And so now it means something. It shows how symbols mean totally different things throughout time, but also how disconnected. But also the other layer to that was that anything is now, you just slap gay on anything, right? Just like make a gay toothbrush, like, it doesn't matter, right? Just put the,
like, it's all
logo.
Been co-opted by all corporations.
Yeah,
of course.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think they really do make you think about things and you think, and then you're like, oh no, I get it. It means this. And then you're like, oh, and then there's this. Like, I think it actually, I think satire is a really useful way to get through to people because it's not like you're not beating somebody over the head with your views.
It's more like a riddle in a way. Like sometimes they're a little more on the nose. Sometimes I'll do them more on the nose, but it's true. It's like you get them to stop and they know the topic and then they start to see what the issue is, but then they start to see the arguments that are embedded in it. And then sometimes you have to take a side, sometimes you don't. But you're engaged in what it's pointing to. And I think the engagement is at least one step away from out of zombie land, which I think at this point is a win in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. You have a new book coming out.
Yes.
Tell us about the book. Tell us how people can get the book.
Great. I'm on Savage Memes is the title of my books always. I'm on volume 4. Volume 4 is appropriately named Post Truth Booster. That's the only that's the only booster you need. And so my books are collectibles. I don't produce runs of them. I produce one run of each volume, and so they sell out. And I don't produce more, and I don't produce high volumes. And I like it that way because I know I'm going to always do a 5 because these Savage Meme volumes are basically like time capsules of the absurdity. I am obligated to document the absurdity in something you can hold, something that can't be deleted from the internet. You're holding it. It's in your bathroom. It's in your wherever you want to put it. And it's a good way to capture things that have been otherwise deleted or hidden from view. And it's also something you can look at like in years from now when your kid or your grandkid asks you like, what was it like? And you go, oh, you have no idea. I promise you my book will give an adequate representation of the times we live in the future. Awesome. And it's at madebyjimbob.com, and I'm found everywhere. Made by Jimbob, Instagram. I'm on my 5th account.
5th?
And, yeah.
But all the other ones were shut down.
They just don't like crude, simple cartoons. I mean, it's like it's dangerous.
So your Instagram account now is
Made by Jimbob. That was my original one, and somehow it became available. That was the one they deleted at 115,000. And then when I got to my 5th account, I just searched the name, and I was able to change my name. So I have my original name at least back. They granted that the lords of information granted me my namesake back. So. Other than that, yeah, madebyjimbob.com. And I have a YouTube channel. It's a lot of panel discussions about wacky things. They do a lot of impersonations and roasting of people on the mostly the right recently, actually. But yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. It was really great to talk with you. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that we can have many more. Thank you so much. Again, it was great to meet with you and talk with you.
You too, Megan. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.